I'm Dr. Sabrina Siegel with the Neuroscience Education Institute. Welcome to the NEI podcast. On this show, I sit down with renowned mental health care experts from a range of diverse backgrounds to discuss breakthroughs and best practices for treating patients with mental health conditions. In this episode of the NEI podcast, I have here with me today our Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Andrew Cutler, and we are discussing a sneak peek at the 2021 NEI Congress. Welcome, Dr. Cutler.
Well, hello. It's great to be here.
Dr. Cutler, what are you most excited about when it comes to this year's NEI Congress?
Well, I guess it sounds silly to say everything, but I am. I mean, the most exciting thing, obviously, is that we're going to be live again this year, for the first time in 2 years.
Right.
So I'm excited to get back to a live meeting. I love interacting with our members and the audience. I love seeing my fellow faculty members. It's just going to be really great that we can do it this year.
What can people who are attending the conference live expect this year?
Well, for those who have been to our conferences before, we just keep getting bigger and better. Mm-hmm. So we're going to have more of our usual NEI education that's built upon the principles of adult education. And that means that there's going to be surprises, there's going to be fun, there's going to be the latest cutting edge information, really engaging, committed faculty who really care about your education. And then there'll be lots of resources there to help you get answers to your questions, learn new information. We're going to have a much expanded exhibit hall this year. The Broadmoor Hotel has done a giant expansion to the exhibit hall. Mm-hmm. So we're going to have a lot more space to spread out. Our main meeting room is much larger than before, which gives us a lot of room to spread out and follow COVID guidelines to make sure that it's really going to be a safe experience. And that's something else I want to emphasize. The staff, we've all done a lot of work on making sure that this is as safe as possible experience for everyone. We've ensured that everybody is vaccinated, and we're going to follow COVID protocols and be very careful.
Excellent. What about those who are attending the conference virtually? What can they expect?
Well, I think they can also expect a really terrific educational experience with a lot of fun and a lot of interactivity. You know, we learned last year when we did the all-virtual NEI Max meeting, we certainly learned how to do a virtual conference. And I think that comparing ours to some of the other conferences out there, we had, I think, one of the best platforms, one of the best experiences for people, again, with a lot of interactivity, including features like a poster session, a social lounge where members can interact with each other and can interact with our faculty. So I think that if you're not able to come, or if you choose not to come this year, that's absolutely fine, but we're going to have a tremendous virtual experience as well. And interestingly, as far as the breakdown of attendees, right now it's about 60% virtual, 40% live. So I'm surprised how balanced that is, actually.
Wow. That's excellent.
Yeah.
Well, I know that we have 3 pre-conference workshops this year: the Child and Adolescent Psychiatry Workshop, the Forensic Psychiatry Workshop, and the Recreational Drug Use Workshop. Which lectures from these pre-conference workshops are you really looking forward to this year?
Well, you know, that's like asking me to choose my favorite child. It's really hard. They're really all terrific. And just quickly looking at the schedule here, you know, we start off the Child Academy with one of our really great faculty members, Dr. Jeffrey Strawn, talking about optimizing pediatric care in challenging times, really timely lecture. And then Dr. Tim Willens, just a tremendous lecturer and world authority on ADHD, is going to be talking about treatment updates on treatment of pediatric ADHD. And then one probably that I am particularly excited about, my good friend, Dr. Adelaide Robb, who's a phenomenal speaker, is giving a talk on autism. And we haven't had one of those really in a long time. Mm-hmm. And that's a very hot topic. And then Dr. Manpreet Singh, one of our newer faculty members, who's really just tremendous, is going to be talking about mood disorders, pediatric mood disorders across the spectrum, followed by panel Q&A. All 3 of these will have panel Q&As. The Forensic Academy is really exciting this year. And this is really a personal mission of Dr. Stahl's, because he works in the California Department of Mental Health System.
Right.
And Dr. Stahl's kicking off this academy with a talk on the neurobiology behind violence and aggression, which tremendous talk.
Oh, yeah.
And then Dr. Catherine Warburton. And Dr. Warburton is the medical director of the California Department of State Hospitals. And she's newer faculty for us. She's going to be talking about criminalization of mental illness. Very important topic. Then a really interesting and practical topic from Dr. Scott, how to detect malingered mental illness, a practical primer. And then another one that's really interesting, risk assessment and management of stalking. I mean, these are very practical, real-world things that we all need to know something about. And then as far as the recreational drug use, the inimitable Dr. Roger McIntyre is going to give us an update on psychedelics. That's a very hot topic these days. And then Dr. Scott's going to talk about cannabis and violence. That's something that people don't always talk about. Dr. Carrie Franson, one of our newer faculty members, is going to be talking about the efficacy of CBD and hemp products, which, of course, very important. A lot of our patients using them. And then I'm going to be batting cleanup and talking about meth use, methamphetamine use. So the pre-conference workshop and the two academies are really terrific if somebody has the time and can attend early.
Excellent. It sounds like we have a very exciting agenda. I know that we have some new faculty joining us this year, and as you know, NEI is committed to growing our diverse network of speakers. Can you share a little bit about the new faculty with us?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is something I'm very committed to as well. And what we've done is we are seeking diversity, of course, gender, race, and also educational background or professional background. So I think we've really done a good job expanding, of course, but we want to make sure we don't compromise the quality, the talent of our NEI faculty, and that commitment, again, to learning and to the learner, the audience. So some of the people that stand out, Dr. Manpreet Singh, I mentioned, is not brand new, but she was new as of last year, NEI Max, and is just terrific. She's a professor of psychiatry at Stanford University. Dr. Catherine Warburton, I mentioned earlier, medical director of the California Department of State Hospitals and a friend of Dr. Stahl's. Dr. Carrie Franson, who's actually not a physician, she's a PharmD and PhD, and as you heard, is going to be giving the CBD and hemp oil talk. And she went through, just before COVID last year, we did a faculty training and included several new faculty members, and Dr. Franson was involved in that faculty training. Then we've got Dr. Rhonda Schwint. Dr. Schwint is a doctorate as a nurse practitioner. She's a DNP. And she's going to be giving an interesting talk on mental health care for transgender and gender diverse people. Then we have Dr. Napoleon Higgins, who was new to us last year, but has been a friend of mine for many years and just a terrific speaker. It was really well received last year. And he's going to be doing two interesting talks, Thursday at 2:15, ADHD and comorbidities. And then Friday at 3 p.m. with Dr. Rona Hu, one of our established faculty members, cultural humility in mental health care, really interesting and important topic. And then another brand new person is Dr. Nicole Ballinger, who's a lieutenant colonel in the United States Air Force. And she'll be giving a talk on Saturday morning at 8:15 with Dr. Stahl on veterans' mental health care. So we're very excited about this new group of people.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for sharing that with us. Can you share some of the novel topics that we'll be addressing at the main Congress event this year?
Well, absolutely. I did mention the autism, which is going to be in the Child and Adolescent Academy by Dr. Robb, and the neurobiology of violence and aggression, Dr. Stahl at the Forensic Academy. How to detect malingering is in the Forensic Academy. The CBD and hemp products is going to be in the pre-conference workshop. But in the main meeting, a talk on antipsychotic drug levels from our friend Dr. Jonathan Meyer, I think is really practical, interesting topic that we haven't heard a lot about. Dr. Schwint's talk that we mentioned earlier, that the mental health care for transgender and gender diverse people. I think the Drs. Higgins and Hu's talk on cultural humility in mental health care. And then a talk that we haven't really addressed in a while directly, and that's the when, why, and how of prescribing benzodiazepines by Dr. Strawn, Dr. Jeffrey Strawn. I think that's a very practical and controversial topic, really. And then another really interesting thing we're doing, we always try to do new kinds of programs. We have an interview with the author of the book Hidden Valley Road. That's Robert Kulker. Friday night at 5:30, myself and Dr. Stahl are going to be talking with Dr. Kulker about this really fascinating book about a family with several children that have schizophrenia, very highly genetically transmitted family of schizophrenia. And then we have total eclipse of the TAR, TAAR, that's the trace amine-associated receptor. This is a very new receptor system that there's now a medication that's a TAR1 agonist that appears to be effective as an antipsychotic, a non-dopamine antipsychotic. That's Saturday afternoon at 4:15. Dr. Stahl will be giving in his inimitable style. I'm going to be doing a talk on nutrition and mental health Sunday morning at 9:30, so hopefully people will stay and not leave too early. And then just after me, last talk on Sunday, batting cleanup, is Dr. Jeffrey Strawn again, a talk on advances in obsessive-compulsive disorder. That's a topic that we haven't really addressed in quite some time.
Excellent. I'm so excited about this agenda. It sounds really great. You did touch on, a little bit of controversy this year. What are some of the other controversial topics that we'll be covering? Can you speak to that?
Well, I think the Forensic Academy is chock full of controversial topics, as I mentioned. We heard the talk about criminalization of mental illness, how to detect malingering, assessment and management of stalking. So those are all very interesting and controversial topics. The recreational drug pre-conference workshop is full of really interesting and controversial topics. I think mental health care for transgender and gender diverse individuals is going to be interesting and somewhat controversial. I think the prescribing benzodiazepines is a talk that's got some controversy to it. There's a lot of controversy about should we prescribe benzodiazepines anymore or not. Some places are outlawing that. And then I'm going to be talking the nutrition and mental health talk. There's a lot of controversy around that, around should I be prescribing probiotics, for instance? Are there certain medications that I need to use or supplements, things like that? So I think we've got a few that are going to be interesting.
Excellent. Do you know if there will be any new focusers this year? First of all, for those listeners who may not know, what is a focuser at NEI?
Sure. Well, this is part of the grounding that we have in principles of adult education and how adults learn. And focusers are short videos that are usually fun, sometimes funny, sometimes fun, sometimes serious, but relating to a topic that we'll be talking about. And we usually play those in between talks or just before a talk starts to sort of help the audience get settled in and focused, hence the name Focuser. But yeah, we certainly have some new ones this year. We get new ones every year, it seems like. One of the ones that I'm really excited about, I got to hear a snippet of this, is Total Eclipse of the TAR. And our director of content, Dr. Debbie Morissette, she's a professional singer in addition to PhD in neuroscience and brilliant. And she's really outdone herself on this one. We've got one on psychedelic drugs using a song from Jefferson Airplane. Who better than to do that? And then we have a focuser having to do with inflammation. So new, exciting, interesting, and fun focusers. And of course, we'll have the usual mix of our old ones as well, including a couple featuring me, maybe. I always say when you work with NEI, you better have a good sense of humor because they'll put you in a focuser or something like that. So we'll see. People can sort of check out and come and see some of their old favorites and see some new fun ones too.
Now, how can attendees get their questions answered if a faculty member runs out of time to address all the questions in the Q&A that follows their presentation?
Yeah, this is one of my personal frustrations, I'll be honest, as a faculty member at NEI. I love answering questions, and sometimes that's one of the most valuable parts of the talk. So we do try to put time in for Q&A after talks, as you heard in pre-conference academies and pre-conference workshop. We've got panel Q&As. But invariably, there's more questions than we can get to. We run out of time. And there's going to be several of the talks will have extended Q&A podcast episodes that you will be moderating, Sabrina. And those are always terrific. We literally take questions that we couldn't get to, get one of the faculty members to record a podcast and answer those questions. Also, with the virtual platform, we have something called the Social Lounge. And our faculty will be joining the Social Lounge and we'll be able to answer questions while they're on the Social Lounge. This is something that we did last year with NEI Max, and it was really a big hit. And then also, audience should know that NEI, the content team, medical education team, always looks at the Q&A and helps us with our needs assessments. We try to keep a finger on the pulse of what our members are interested in, what they need to hear about, want to learn more about as we plan our future topics and our future events. So there are many different ways that you can potentially get your questions answered. And certainly you can also interact with us through the NEI website as well. And sometimes there are questions that we can get to that way as
well. Right. So that brings me to my final question, which is what is one benefit that both live and virtual attendees will experience at the 2021 NEI Congress?
Well, I think for both sets of attendees, you can experience fun and learning. Dr. Morissette calls it edutainment, if you will. And I think that's, a unique style. It sets us apart from, there's many good CME meetings out there. There's many good medical education and psychiatric, especially mental health kinds of meetings. What sets us apart, again, I think, is our grounding in the principles of adult education. Mm-hmm. And so there are various techniques that we actually use, and we train our faculty to really be participant and learner focused. And there's a number of ways you can do that. And that also includes the fact that adults like to have a little bit of fun and have a good time with their learning. So I think you'll gain that in our unique style. And I think you're going to end up enjoying and telling your friends about it. That's how we've grown over the years, by word of mouth.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Cutler, for joining us. And thank all of you for listening.
Thanks very much. Hopefully see you there.
Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of the NEI podcast. Please let us know what you'd like to hear more about by leaving a review. Don't miss another episode. Subscribe today.